Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Corner Talks podcast. Today I have a talented filmmaker, Laura Eden. How are you? How's it going?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm
Doing
great. Thank
well.
you.
That's great. Thank you. Laura and I, to give you guys some background, we connected through LinkedIn. She saw some of my podcasts and I saw some of her impressive work, her impressive resume. You've been quite involved in the industry, both at Ryerson University, I should say. I'm an alumni there. So it's always a pleasure to see someone attending the school. And like I said, as well, the film industry.
Well, thank you for that. I don't know. I'm still getting started, and I'm still a film student,
Right.
but I'm definitely trying to learn as much as possible just about, like filmmaking also through like commercial jobs. Like right now, I'm mainly just making commercials for crypto chicks, but
Nice. Yeah, I wanted to get into that. But before we start talking about, what kind of career you're pursuing, I want to know the reason for it. So why did you pursue and get involved in the creative industry?
well, I always liked film. Like I thought that, it was just like I loved watching movies as a kid and I liked acting. But I think like once I got into high school, I started realizing like doing like behind the scenes work was a lot of fun. And I liked how you got to have more control of how a story is told. But I think like the thing that really just, I don't know, it sounds a bit immature, but I'd see movies on Netflix and I was like, this is garbage. I could make
Yeah,
something better than this.
right,
And
right.
then I was like, I'm gonna do that. And then a couple of years later, and I'm trying to do that currently.
Yeah, no, for sure. I had
Oh,
that same.
sorry. Am I
Yeah,
am I frozen?
no, 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 you're good. It cuts in and out, but that's Zoom for you. But
Okay.
yeah, that's you say made an interesting point. That's something that I can relate to 100%. When I see content on TV all the time, especially television, if it's not a streaming service, right? Just uh, witnessing the stuff they put on like cable, basic TV is just not the same like it used to be back then. And you kind of like say to yourself, especially if you have a story formulating in your mind, and you're a highly visual person like myself, you want to make it a reality, right? You want to figure out how to get there. And it's been quite a process for sure. I'm sure you can relate, right? It's not so easy as you pick up a phone and
Yeah.
get a bunch of people together. Just getting to that point, like, first of all, articulating the vision in words, right? As a screenplay. I don't know if you're a writer as well, but
Yeah.
just oh, you are. That's right.
Yeah.
On your LinkedIn, I remember screenwriter. That's right. So you're exactly like that. Me, like writer, director, filmmaker at heart, and you would probably edit your own projects as well, right? Because you really want that control, like that vision.
Yeah, right now I do like my editing for the most part. However, I do want to work with like an editor in future projects, or like I want to try to do that simply
Yeah.
because one thing I've always heard is that it's really helpful when the editor was not on set because they're not looking at it from, we worked so hard to get this shot. They're looking at, do we need this shot? Because,
Yeah.
we need to make sure that it's always engaging and everything feels motivated. And I think
Mhm.
that having someone that wasn't, like invested in making all of your hard work pay off, like they're just trying to make it, work fully as a story. So I like, while I do like editing and I find it really fun and creative, I still like, I would like to work with someone for editing, like in future projects or bigger projects.
Yeah, a true filmmaker, really like a professional, like the people that I always talk about on this podcast, like a Tarantino, Scorsese, they sit with their editors. They're not actually physically the ones like putting the pieces together. I know there's been times like James Cameron will edit it, but for the most part, they're just contributing, giving pieces of advice about shots and what was the motivation, what was their intention as a director. And then the editor ultimately decides, how the information is to be perceived, interpreted from the audience, right? And exactly your point, you'll run into the situation. I know I have. I'm actually in the current process of you'll realize like clips are redundant. And it's like, am I editing it from a filmmaker's perspective or am I editing it from how the audience is going to be perceiving it? So you have to kind of shave it down. Even with sound, right? Sometimes, again, you're biased to the situation. So you can't detect maybe what an audience member hears or how they're going to be first viewing it because you've been in even though we do short films, like it's not 2 year projects, you still stay with them a long period of time, right? Whether it's a month, 4 months, whatever have you. So you become attached to them. And I think it's
Yeah.
really hard to find that disconnect. But that's for sure. Yeah, you said it right there. I think for filmmakers, maybe at our level, or ones that are trying to make their way in the industry, are kind of either forced or take it upon themselves to be editors, because everything is a cost,
Hmm.
and there's just a lot of back and forth. And again, I know a lot of filmmakers, I myself, speaking for myself, would like to see the vision carry all the way through. But you have to entrust people in this business. It's a collaborative experience, right? You have to find like an editor, like you said, that's more talented than you in a way, that can bring your story to life and serve it justice, um, while keeping it concise and efficient in how
Yeah.
they deliver it.
I think also just like making sure that the integrity of the story is always like
Yes.
staying there.
Hmm.
Because like it's definitely interesting, like at my school when we're working on projects and one person is editing and another person is directing, because then, like when they're working together, there'll be times where you have to like, okay, is this like, do you just want to put this in there because you shot it, or like, is this like just pointless, or could we rearrange it? And I think that I think like that's something about film school that is pretty valuable, is that you have the ability to meet a lot of people and work with a lot of people, because like like you often have to take on a lot of work if you're starting out, but if you have film school there, then you can bring in a lot of people, or it's like
Yeah.
it's a lot easier to get free workers. Well, not free, but you know what I mean, like
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
collaborate on it.
Collaborative. Yeah. They're doing it for the portfolio, really, right? To
Hmm.
broaden their experience. And that's something that I'm glad you brought up. The idea of going to an institution for film. Like I can't, not that I can't, I know it exists. I just can't comprehend the idea of, go to film school, because at the end of the day, the professor is like giving you a rubric, a criteria, and you have to follow, what they want to see. So I don't know if that would compromise, like you said, your integrity, or if there's a student that has that unique kind of artistic touch. But at the same time, I think film school, unarguably, can be said where it's such an opportunity to meet like-minded individuals, and create your network. That's something that I'm noticing the drawbacks of. Obviously, it's been proven you can make it without film school, but at the same time, like I just experienced a lot of the challenges, of starting from the bottom, like going to networking events, connecting with people that I don't even know, a lot of trial and error, right? A lot of people that they're- they talk a lot, like they're passionate, but then when it comes to actually showing up, it doesn't work out. So I guess that's part of the experience, and a film school doesn't guarantee it, but it'll definitely help you, especially in a city like Toronto, where we're not known to be a film city. It's becoming an entertainment hub, but it's not like a Los Angeles. It'll help you filter through all the people, and what their intentions are.
Hmm. I think that it really depends when you were saying about like working with a rubric and like doing an assignment that has to fit within like, or like a film that has to fit within the assignment. I think
Yeah.
it depends because like in my first year I noticed that I think like the teachers were pretty like gentle with us, they were very like, oh, it's okay, even when we weren't like specifically like going within the lines of the project.
Hmm.
And I thought that was helpful because it allowed us to like, actually show off like what our creative style was. Because surprisingly, like there was a lot of different styles that I've seen within like my specific year. I don't know about the other years, I don't see enough of their work, but and then also like in like this year, again with like we had like these very specific assignments, but what was cool about it was that afterwards we could see like some very different like genres coming from like this, like one assignment was show a love story except one person doesn't know the other one loves them. And some of them were kind of like horror-esque, some of them were more like rom-coms,
Yeah.
and some of them were more like family stories, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. No, for sure. I don't think there's that much restraint, especially as the film industry progresses, and like there's so many ways in which you can distribute your content now, with YouTube. And I heard even up and coming filmmakers getting deals with Netflix. Netflix Canada offered you know filmmakers on our level to pitch. I was one of the 26,000, maybe even more, that pitched. So it's just there's definitely those avenues, and I think film schools have adapted to that for sure. I've just run into some people that they've had issues, conflicts with the professors, because they
Mhm.
had to, at the end of the day, like follow like a certain guideline. But it's all about perception, right? Like at the end of the day, like put it into perspective, you know, you want to be challenged that way, especially if you're new to the industry, especially if you're new to the craft. You want to be, like you told, like you said, told, there's a love story, but one of the people don't know that the other person loves them, right? It's like you want to kind of force and challenge yourself and see, how can I execute that story. Whether you're an action director, whether you're into sci-fi, whether you're into comedy, you have to find a way to like make it work for yourself.
Well, limitations often like inspire us to be more creative. Like with the
Yeah,
Hays Code, I know they had to try really hard to show that two people, were doing stuff with each other.
right,
Or like I think also though, like within film school, what you can do is, you present one version to your class to get the mark, and then you can just edit it later and put it off to film festivals. So you have the version that you want,
right.
and you can like, do it and be like, the auteur you're meant to be. But then for, like your class, you can appease the professor by like, just doing what they want. I think like I think like it depends. Like you do want to stay true to like what the story is, but I don't know. Like I think sometimes you can just like do it for the grade.
Yeah, you have to know how to tweak it for sure, especially if you made it that far, right? You're not going to just drop out,
Mhm.
for the sole purpose of retaining that integrity on your film, right? But you made a good point. Yeah, you would kind of edit it in a way where you're falling between in the lines, if you have a really strict kind of professor, regimented guidelines, and then once that's done, you can make your own version, right? I think that's a lot of filmmakers can agree with that. I always have my version on a backup just in case.
Mhm.
And I've learned the hard way that it's you should duplicate your Premiere Pro files because
Yeah.
there's going to be a lot of changes. And I think one time I was editing a short film and I made all the changes that someone requested, and then we looked at it again and said, "Oh, okay, half of the changes, he wanted to revert them back to my original version." And I said, "Oh my God, I just wasted so much time. I was working hard, not smart." So I had to go back and like, yeah, replace it. And yeah, that's no fault but my own. However, yeah, it's so important to have different versions and a different way to have your film, be presented. It kind of scares me in a way. I don't know if it does for you, that like film, there's so many different interpretations. Like as a director, like I only have one vision for it, but I
Mhm.
run into a lot of situations where, again, it's a collaborative experience, and the more people you collaborate with, the more people are gonna interpret things differently and suggest different things. How do you handle that? How do you go through that?
Yeah, that's really interesting that you say that because I find, especially like in classes, the way we, write stories, especially I think like we've run into certain problems. Well, not my group, but I know other groups like the way that they presented women in their films.
Right.
Like they received some criticism for that because of like certain language that was used against them, and it's like, okay, is this actually helpful or is this kind of like regressive? And I think like of course your intent matters, but I think that if you do your research, you're most likely going to be fine.
Yeah.
I do a lot of research particularly in that because I want to know for ways on how I can like, I guess just, like they're empowering, but also it's like it's fun to watch. Because like while I understand that there's reasons for why movies, um, like I haven't seen Promising Young Woman, but I know like what people have been saying about it, and I think like stuff like that, it has its place, but like I'm more interested in making movies that like they're fun to watch, but also they don't they don't fall into old tropes or outdated stuff.
Yeah, for sure. You want your film to be as relevant as possible, unless it's a period piece. That's what I was going to bring up. Like one can argue, it's the context, right? Like how people would talk in in
Right.
that scenario, right? Like a big example for me, and I bring him up a lot, but like Tarantino, Django Unchained, he was getting a lot of backlash for the use of the N word in his movie, and they felt that he used it by his own liberty, like he was almost having fun with it. But he made a good point. He said, to really truly feel immersed in that time period, I wanted to show how people treated that word, how people spoke that word with such nuance. Like they just kind of said it without any responsibility, any remorse. And the ones that argue it, I can definitely understand. Right? It's very sensitive subject matter that shouldn't be expressed freely. But at the same time, it's fitting for the tone and what the filmmaker is trying to convey. Would you agree?
I kind of like I see that point. But I don't know if it's like I often find it's a bit of a cop out, to be honest, because I think that, there'll be a lot of cases where people say that, oh, it's realistic, but movies don't have to be realistic. There's plenty of movies that are, period pieces, but they're not realistic. So then why
Right.
does their dialogue have to be realistic?
Hmm.
I think that, like if you want to show just how careless, like I haven't seen Django Unchained, so I'm not going to say that it's good or bad or anything.
Right. Right.
um but like if you say that, I put this in because of this, then I'd hope that he also made an effort to show what that word had, like what the effect that word had on people that it's, negatively used against, like stuff like
Oh,
that,
he
just
did. Yeah. And that's what a
how.
lot of people, yeah, and that's what a lot of people missed, right? Is that it's not so, it wasn't just said in other movies. He used it. I was kind of even taken back, like Reservoir Dogs, because I'm like, are these white people really just throwing around that word? But for Django Unchained, the whole point of the movie was about slavery, right? And how, it affected the lives of Black people, and basically tormented them for hundreds of years. So I kind of like it kind of works into that setting. It was a very interesting movie, like the dynamic, because back to your point, it was about a real life event, but it wasn't realistic because it was stylized,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So it's
Yeah.
kind of there's like a blur, and you don't know where to draw the line, kind of thing. So I think that's why people were kind of on the fence about it. But yeah, for me, it was more like I kind of, as a filmmaker, I kind of listened to what their reasoning is. And on the panel, he said the whole point is to create a dialogue, is to get people to talk about that time period and talk about, because I think up until that point, still slavery is still a sensitive subject matter, but it wasn't as discussed, I think, to the point that it is now.
See, like I see what he's saying by that.
Hmm.
Again, I'm not going to talk about the
Yeah, yeah,
film itself, but like I think that it's important that when you're trying to open up a discussion,
right.
you make sure that the question is leading it into like a progressive direction, because sometimes like if you're making, you're talking about, say, like gender inequality, and if you start off the question by saying, so do women deserve rights, then I feel like that's just kind of like, that's just not going to be helpful, because you're like, oh, so should, like it's already like it's kind of taking
Like a
us
yes or
aback a bit,
it's a yes
right?
or no. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's kind
it
of
shouldn't be
implied.
that.
Yeah,
Like I
like
think
yeah.
it should be more like, so how, like how are the ways that, they're being unfairly treated, and then because then you can bring out the receipts and then you can show like in the ways of how, there's gaps. But I think like, and so this is not really like I can bring up a different movie to like illustrate my point a bit better. Like
Yeah.
I personally don't really like the movie Borat that much, because I feel
Okay.
like And like I believe that like Sacha Baron Cohen, he's allowed to make Jewish jokes. That's his place. I'm
Yeah.
not going to get mad at him for that.
Yeah.
However, I think that some of the jokes that were made when it came to like, people that were different races or like women, I thought that it was not really helpful because like what he's doing is he's sort of just reinforcing negative stereotypes, but also like to their faces. So he's harassing them for a film.
Hmm.
And no one, at least especially not like these days, people are talking a lot about how like directors cannot be abusing anyone on set. It's not appropriate, and it's not appropriate in any job. Like you
For
can't
sure. Yeah.
abuse or harass people. So
Yeah.
then why is it okay for him to harass people for a mockumentary documentary film?
Right.
um, yeah, I'm not like, and I don't like, I'm not in the business of canceling him because the movie's like it's been out for
He
like
already made a
what,
sequel.
since 2006. Yeah, and he
Yeah.
made a sequel, but like I thought that worked amazing. I thought
Oh,
it
okay. Cool.
worked
Hmm.
because he really like it seemed that he really took criticisms from the last one and he applied it. And also
Hmm.
he like chose to mainly stay in his lane, as well as also like there was very gender focused in the second one,
Hmm.
to the point when I know that there's a lot of moments that made people uncomfortable, and I think that works. For me watching it, I didn't feel uncomfortable at one point, because I felt like they were more angled towards women and they made men more uncomfortable. And that's kind of like, I feel like that's, art is supposed to comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable,
Yeah.
especially satire.
Yeah.
So I think that like as long as the questions are being angled in a certain way, like I think that Borat 2 did it, but I don't think Borat 1 angled the questions in the right way.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
for sure. That's an interesting
that was a
take, and I've
rant.
never no for hey, like that's what I love about film, right? Everyone has an opinion, everyone's a critic. There's no such thing as a perfect story either, and I can understand what you mean because when I watched Borat, I was very young. I didn't even know what to think of it at first. I thought it was just laugh out like gags and slapstick and whatever, and then you watch it as you get older, and that's with any film, really. I always recommend to people like watch a film like 10 years later and see if you still like it, because you mature as an individual, you change your perspective, your views on the world, and you might not agree or you might disagree. I mean, you might agree or disagree with the film, but with Borat, I can understand what you're saying, and my interpretation was more like, uh, even though there were at times when it got really dark and really intense, where it was like, wow, is this really happening? Um, I always took it as like a satire, like he's basically revealing the ugliness of some people, of like how they perceive, like the stupidity of how one dimensional they think of like Jewish people or people from the Middle East, like the Americans, and basically he's putting up a mirror to America and saying, this is what's really going on the inside. And the second one I enjoyed as well. I enjoyed it more, and I feel like I could be wrong. I feel like he did a different angle too, where he let the people, like he put the girl, for example, in those situations, and then he let the people around the girl, instead of like provoking them, he let the
Yeah.
people around them like come out with the jokes and come out with
Mhm.
their perceptions, and he created that conflict, right? Like he would just suggest things. He would have the girl just suggest things like, I want to get a boob job, and it was the doctor that was really like misogynistic, like
Yeah.
explaining like why
Yeah.
you need to get a boob job. And if you think about it, if you take a step back, like they just threw a few lines in there. They were obviously playing off of his comments
Yeah.
because they couldn't believe it. And you as a viewer are looking at that saying, in that situation, you're taking a step outside the box and saying, wow, like this doctor, he's in the business for so many years. Like that's how he views how important it is, whether he's a salesman because he really wants to sell his product, or whether he does believe in those values. He believes that a woman's appearance is the ultimate determinant of who she is as a person. Right?
Well, also, like, I think that, like, in the first one, there's not really like a there's not really like a storyline. It kind of just goes all around the place, and then he
Yeah, yeah,
decides he
yeah,
loves Pamela Anderson, and then he
yeah,
tries to kidnap her at the end. But in the
yeah.
second one, there's like a real emotional core between him
There
and his
is, yeah.
daughter.
Hmm.
And also, like, I felt like that more so exposed like, America and the dark side of it, because in the first one, I think in the part when he's like, especially at the beginning, and he's interviewing like the feminists, like throughout the whole time, he's just, he's saying, "Oh, you look like a man. Oh, you're ugly." And I
Yeah,
feel like someone who's already against that watching this movie is
of
just going to
course.
be like, "Ha, they're getting mad at him, but they are ugly." LMAO. Like, I
Right,
don't
right,
think
right.
that would change anyone's mind by seeing that. I don't think that scene is putting up a mirror. I think he's just harassing some people in that scene. Whereas, like, I think when he was singing like the Kazakhstan, like the fake national anthem,
Yeah, yeah,
to like all these like Americans in like a rodeo or something, and then they start booing because he's saying that like we're better than you, and then the Americans are like, "What do you mean?" And then they start booing him. I think that right there is like putting up a mirror, because it's showing that like, like I think a lot of people I know, at least, if they like saw some person sing a song that was saying that like, "Oh, Canadians suck" or whatever, they'd just be like, "What?" Like, they'd
yeah,
just be kind of like confused, but they wouldn't get mad. Whereas I feel like, there's definitely some people in America that don't like any, like teasing or stuff like that. Like, they
yeah,
really
yeah, for sure. Like some
teasing.
people don't have a sense of humor, and it's been proven, with the whole like political climate, right? Like it's just insane
Hmm.
what's going on. The only thing that would make sense is that there's so many people, that when you have like the third largest population like that, the first world nation that has a voice in the world, a major voice, I should say, you're going to have a probability of people that are either crazy or completely to the far right of the spectrum, or far left kind of
Yeah.
thing, right? Like it's inevitable. It's also values, like Canada, like you just said. Um, we have a dominant middle class. So I would say like normal, average people, go that live a comfortable, easy life, simple life. So what I'm saying is that you'll have situations like, let's say I would stand in Nathan Phillips Square and start singing, "Oh Canada," like, I don't care about this land. Like people would either ignore me or just smirk and say, "Get down." Like, what are you doing? But no one would go
Yeah.
that crazy. Like who would go that crazy? Hey, there's always going to be that one guy, right? That would
Yeah,
probably
there
start a
there
fight.
will be like the
Yeah. But I'm just
yeah.
saying, but like you said, exactly your point. I strongly believe, and I know a lot of people, and nothing to condemn on the Americans. It's just different value systems, right? They hold very true to their heart, like the whole Constitution, right? The values and principles of the founding fathers. So they take it so serious, like the rights to bear arms. I know I'm getting political here, but it's it's the reality. I think that's the whole point of the Borat series, right? Is he's diving into the psychology of
Mhm.
people, right, in this
Yeah.
nation, how they view the world too, right? Like how they view people on another side of the world. Him coming from Kazakhstan. I think that was my interpretation. The whole point was like when he would introduce himself to people, a lot of people said where, what. They were ignorant to where he was. They didn't really weren't really curious. Um, I think he even at one time was trying to be boastful about his country, like what they do,
Yeah.
and he was immediately like turned down and said, "No, I don't believe you." Or so I think it's just a an exposition, you know.
Yeah, I definitely think that also, like, because he used a country that it like, I don't know, I don't hear that much about Kazakhstan in the news. I
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just me. Maybe I don't
Before you
know the news
continue, I
enough.
have to say, like, I'm surprised you used, come to think of it, like an actual country, because people, these movies, they
Yeah,
usually, right?
I was surprised about that too. I think that's another criticism that he got, like, particularly because Kazakhstan is like, I think it's predominantly Muslim, and
Yeah.
for him to make jokes about like, the goats and stuff like that, and like that like definitely gives a negative impression on Muslims, and as well as like, if like a bunch of, because like I think like a huge part of the Borat audience is like seventh graders. I'm not trying to like, dunk
Right.
on seventh graders, but like they're gonna see that. and they're gonna not really be laughing for the right reasons. They're
Hmm.
gonna be laughing because it's mocking people that they don't know much about.
Right.
So they could totally, and then, I think like seventh graders are gonna like repeat those lines at school in front of a girl or in front of someone who's Muslim, or like,
Mm.
and then it can have like a huge, like, like a negative
For
impact.
sure. For sure. Well, if that's a very good point, and that's something, unfortunately, that comes down to, like, the rating systems and the parent, like, it's meant for a mature audience, right?
Hmm.
But nowadays, the issue you run into is you can access any form of media, right, with the click of a button. If Borat is on Netflix, you can watch Borat, and every child, like seventh graders, watching Borat. So for sure, yeah, they can access that kind of information and relay it. But a lot of people can argue, like, it just comes down to parenting, and because I watched it when I was 10, right? I'm a prime example. So I watched the first one, I was 10 years old, and I never uttered those words when I was out, like, in front of girls or in public, or if I had Muslim friends. So it is possible to watch a piece of content. I think it's just a matter of how you're raised, and that's testament to my parents, right?
Yeah.
But exactly your point. It's kind of like, you don't know in those situations. I think what I respect about filmmakers like that is they're so ballsy. Like, they take those risks, take those chances, and they want people to start thinking beyond the comedy, right? That's the interpretation. Again, that's how I feel when I watch Borat. It's, at first you watch it, oh, it's like these stupid gags, and then you start saying, like, wow, like, is this really how some people perceive certain nationalities? It's kind of like poking fun, like saying, look how stupid racism is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I see that, but like I think that I still feel like the first one was not anywhere near as effective as the second one
For
was,
sure.
because
Yeah.
I think that like like with Stephen Colbert's show when he played like this Republican caricature, apparently it was like when they asked liberals about the show, they like liberals enjoyed it because they thought it was funny, whereas like what conservatives thought is that it was also funny because it was like he was like I forget exactly what the wording was, but they also didn't see it as mocking them. Like they saw it as kind of like, oh, it's funny that he's saying things like vaguely agree with that. And like at the end of the day, if comedy is sort of ambiguous, whatever your background is, you're probably going to just project it onto whatever the piece is. Like you're going to assume it's agreeing with you, if it's done pretty well, because there's some cases where like no one knows it's for. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that I do see where you're coming from, but yeah, I'm still more on like I like the second one a lot, and I think
For
it's
sure. Yeah.
really really brilliant.
Yeah.
But I'm on not on the Borat one train. I'm just
No,
not.
yeah. Look, again, you're entitled to your opinion, right? Like, the second one, I will agree with you on that. I watched it once, and I immediately knew that there was something different. It was more focused, and like you said, it had an emotional core. I actually felt for the characters,
Mhm.
um, and there was like a natural chemistry. The first one, I think it was more of guy humor, like debauchery, like he's just on the run. Like, there's not really much, you know what I mean, like, happening. There's those things that I mentioned before, um, but I can see why you enjoyed the second one for sure. And as a filmmaker, I appreciate it even more because that's something I wanted to talk about, right? Like storytelling, like
Mhm.
the emotional core is so important. And whenever I develop a project with a friend or even myself, I always ask the number one question: why am I writing this? Like, what is the point?
Yeah.
What is the audience going to get out of it?
Mhm.
And movies today, right? Like, you see some of the ones that are successful and the ones that are not. If you take it apart, you know how that expression, love conquers all, or
Yeah.
love saves all, right? I've said that once on a set, and people laughed at me, and I said, I don't know why you're laughing. I'm like, that's a central theme in pretty much any movie you watch. It's always about love or some kind of companionship. And we may laugh because we find it corny, or corny to say, but as human beings, we desire that, right? We strive for that in our everyday lives. And just like movies like The Matrix, Star Wars, Goodfellas, Pulp Fiction. There was always that like central of love, right? Like Pulp Fiction, I just mentioned, right? There's sexual love, romantic love, right? And then there's also brotherly love, like between Vince and Jules. Have you watched Pulp Fiction by any chance?
No, I've
Oh,
not.
okay.
So
Okay.
it's pretty
I'm just like
funny to me
talking.
because I'm like,
Okay.
yeah, the most like the film student movie, like
Right.
the Gen Z. Well, I mean, also millennials, I think they love it too. Like just in general,
Yeah, yeah,
everyone's
I'm a millennial.
talking
Yeah.
about it, and
Yeah.
I'm just like, I still have not seen it yet, but sure,
We got to
yes,
get you up to speed on some of these movies. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know, like I'm
If you
still
have an
making my
interest, that's a
way
big,
through like
yeah.
the film bro movies.
Got you. Got you.
Um, just a lot on my watch list. So I don't know. One of these days I'll get to it. I just don't know exactly when.
Well, let me ask you this. What kind of movies have you watched that you enjoyed or maybe inspired you even more to pursue filmmaking?
I really love campy movies a lot. I
Okay.
think camp is really cool because it's a great way to show complex ideas without talking down to the audience because
Right.
they're in on the joke. I think that Little Shop of Horrors, the 80s musical that I saw it, like it's directed by Frank Oz, I'm pretty sure. I saw it a few days ago and I thought it was so cool
Nice.
because I think that like it's really fun, but also like if you read between the lines, well, at least I read into everything.
Right.
I thought that it's kind of about how like poor people are often guilted into feeling like they're bad people for doing stuff that they need to do to survive.
Yeah.
Um, and I sort of think that that's what happened with like Seymour and the plant. I mean, of course, like also he did feed people to a plant, but I think that it's like a metaphor for that, because also like in the very beginning of the film they show like, like all the poor people are talking about how like they're like, man, this sure does suck, and then like he grows with wealth and he's a lot happier. However, has all this guilt inside of him, and the plant is talking to him like, oh, you're a bad person, you might as well just keep doing this. And yeah, and I thought it was just also it was really fun to watch. And it was, like I love the jokes, I love the style of humor. It's like, on the nose for like a point. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. You said it right there, right? Like when you feel like the movie, the people involved are in on the joke.
Hmm.
That's like one of the best things. And um, I'm a big proponent of this movie, Iron Man, the first one. And the reason why I say that is because even though it's not a campy movie, you feel like they're in on the joke, like everybody's having a good time. I don't know if it's the same point you were making, but I enjoy movies that like you just feel um, everyone is working in uh, harmony. If that
Yeah.
makes sense, right? Like they're not. There's no heavy, like even the heavy content that they're drilling into your head. Like if you think about it, it talks about themes like the war on terror, like the Middle East, and selling weapons, and the moral dilemma. But it's not. It's still a movie you can digest easy. You can watch, you can have fun, but at the back of your head, like, damn, like that's a crucial message. Like that's probably what's going on to this day. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And I think it's just a different approach for sure. But yeah, campy films I have to get more into. I've seen them a lot. I've seen them reviewed. I watch a YouTube channel called Red Letter Media,
Oh.
and yeah. Oh, have you heard of them?
I've heard of them. I don't
Oh, okay.
personally watch them much, but it's
Okay.
very big in like film students and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my God, I'm so happy to hear that. I always mention it to film people in my community, and they're always like, "Who? What?" But that's amazing that they watch it. Yeah. No, I talk about dry humor. That's an interesting show, but they make some very good points, and that's kind of like between them and Nostalgia Critic. Have you heard Nostalgia Critic?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh my
not
God.
not a fan of
Not a
Nostalgia
fan of
Critic
Nostalgic.
though.
Oh my
I
God.
like the Nostalgia Chick, and I like what
Okay.
she's gone on to do,
Okay.
but the Nostalgia Critic, I am not a fan of in any way, shape, or form.
Why is he too annoying? Like loud in your face?
Well, first off, because when I watched his reviews, I know he was playing a character, but there was something that just felt off about him.
Okay.
And then he also like his channel, and basically him and like his coworkers, like there was this huge scandal that was released about all of the
Yeah,
abusive treatment of his employees, and I
I heard
felt
about
like
that.
it made a lot of sense because like a lot of his film, because he made films also, his
Yeah,
films
yeah.
are super like they're just they're
Eccentric.
they're bad, but in a weird way, because obviously they're not trying to be amazing, but
Yeah.
also they're bad. And yeah, it's in such a strange genre of bad. Like I don't even know how to describe the
You can't even
flavor.
define it as quirky. It's more like it's like The Room. You want to watch it, but you don't want to watch it, but you are watching it, right?
Not well, I kind of disagree because I think The Room is really fun to watch, and I think
Oh,
that
okay,
The
okay.
Room has like it's just like it's kind of a sweet movie, but I think like with Nostalgia Critic, I find it just he's creepy and he's just like he feel like when I see him talking, I just feel like a bunch of spiders are crawling on me. Like
Oh
I
my
just
God.
I'm
Everyone
like,
has a
ooh,
different, yeah, no, everyone has definitely a different opinion, for sure. When I first watched him, when he came onto the scene, I think I watched one of his first episodes and I kind of grew with his channel. I was taken back because I didn't know what to expect. He was just like chopping up a movie. And then like there were times when like I would watch, I liked when he would calm down, you know what I mean? Like he would put away the humor and he would actually explain why a scene doesn't work, or why a character, like it would actually help me as a filmmaker. Like, yeah, I take pieces of knowledge from anywhere I can. And I think a lot of people can provide that, but for sure, yeah, if you didn't take a liking to him, I'm sure there's other people out there like that, but he was definitely entertaining for me, especially in my university years. In between study breaks, I would just watch that because it was interesting. It was fascinating to me that he would pick apart movies that like I grew up with, and I said like, you actually have a problem with them? What the hell? What's going on? Like Home Alone and the Spider-Man movies, the Raimi movies. And I don't know. I'm always curious and fascinated. And I'm sure you could say the same thing as a filmmaker of other filmmakers' opinions about movies.
yeah,
Because you know what I mean. Like Django Unchained. I'll give you an example. Uh, when I watched in the theater, it blew me away. It was like a theater experience. Like I'm a big fan of stylized films. Uh, love his writing, his dialogue, and the way he put it together. And the sound was impeccable. So I come out of the theater and everyone's raving about it. I'm watching interviews after interviews, and then I come across a really good friend of mine, my best friend, I should say, I grew up with. And I mentioned it to him thinking he's going to say the same thing. Like, yeah, that was so sick. Like, let's watch it again. And he goes, cheesiest thing I ever watched. I'm like, what? And it kind of broke my heart in a way because I realized it was a maturing moment for me, right? It's like there's going to be people out there that are going to interpret and provide a different opinion than you are. You know what I mean?
mhm,
That's what
yeah.
film is. It's a discussion. It's not, a product. It's an art form.
It's also it's like super emotional. Like I think it's the most emotional medium there is because it
Yes.
combines basically everything.
Yep.
So like to make like a full-on experience, but then
Yeah.
also it's something that like but it's also accessible, right? Because you can watch it on a laptop, on a big screen, on a TV, basically on a plane, in so many different places. So basically anyone can watch them. And also because film, especially in the early days, it was considered to be like a low class thing to do.
Oh yeah, it was a gimmick. Yeah.
Yeah, it was something
They used
that
to
like
put
was
like
in dirty move like
yeah.
old churches and stuff like that.
Well, they would put like, I'm talking like way back, like when
Yeah,
they did
yeah.
train sequences,
Mhm.
or those slaps. The kind of like I wouldn't say Charlie Chaplin was in that category because he's considered a legend, but kind of that humor, right? Like you didn't see it as an art form. It was just more like, what can we do with this moving picture, right?
Yeah.
All these different antics. And it's kind of like with video games, right? Video games when they first started were seen as just entertainment, like something to kill the time, ping pong on the Atari or even the Nintendo games, right? Platform games. And then you got something like a developer like Sony comes along and wants to create an art form out of video games. And you have video games like Last of Us, Uncharted, um, God of War. Like again, everyone's gonna have a different opinion on the storytelling, but you have to agree in a sense that it's taken on another form. Video games. I don't know if you've seen like how they look compared to how they look 20 years ago. And I've played
I
these video games. That's why I mentioned, I don't know if you've like played Last of Us or heard of it. They're written like Oscar winning films. Like there's
yeah,
character arcs, three-dimensional. Yeah.
I haven't played those games, but I do know that my brothers like they play them, and also because I have a few friends that play games like them, and I'm pretty sure they played The
Nice.
Last of Us also. Um, and they talk about like the writing, and it does sound a lot like how you would discuss a film,
Hmm.
specifically like the masterpiece films or like the Kino stuff, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I had a podcast with my friend way back when I first started this thing. And we had a whole podcast episode, or half of it was talking about The Last of Us as if it was a movie we watched. Much harder because a movie you watch it in one sitting.
Mhm.
Um, but a video game, especially if you're busy, will take a month to, depending
Mm.
on the time, right? So
Yeah.
you're trying to recollect all the important key moments.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, I don't know. I think that's one of my intentions. I'll say it right here on the podcast is to get to that point where I can even create like a movie-esque, a cinematic piece through video games. Um, I think it's possible too, like with how technology is moving. You're going to start seeing independent. I think they already started like indie video games, like people that
Yeah.
make on their spare time, right? Um, and I think that's the impression I got from you when I looked at your resume. Like when I looked at
Mhm.
your LinkedIn profile, is even though you're like screenwriter, editor, director, things like that, I think you identify yourself as a storyteller. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, like I try to do everything, like all the filmmaking stuff that I do, I want it to be like always thinking about story and thinking like, do I need this? Because especially like in your early stages, it's easy to get like caught up in like, how do I make this epic? How do I make this like, oh, very like thoughtful? But I think you want to like, I don't know, not think about like, how is this going to be super deep? I think just like think about like, simple story stuff first,
Yeah.
because I think like if you focus on that, then you're not, I don't know, you're not focusing on like the easy pitfalls that a lot of students have with their scripts.
Yeah. Well, the
Yeah.
best movies, just to interject, the best movies of all time have a common theme, like a pattern, is that it's very simple. Boy loves girl, girl doesn't love boy. Star-crossed lovers. Like if you overcomplicate your story, you're just
Hmm.
overcomplicating the process, and the
Yeah.
viewers and the audience will perceive it in that way. Um, so what I'm saying is that anyone that's listening to this, or even ourselves, like when we're developing a story, I think it's just boiling it down to what do you want this character, what do you want the story to be, like what like a focused kind of narrative. um Borat is an example, right? The original, it's like, yes, he wants to go to the States because he's making a documentary, but then he falls in love with Pamela Anderson, quirky things happen along the way. But Borat 2 was just a simple story.
Yeah.
He's going to America and with his daughter, and yeah, it's really cool. I don't know what your take is on writing, if you struggle with it. Does it come
Yeah.
easy to you?
Recently, I read Save the Cat, and I thought that
Okay.
was an extremely
Same
helpful
here.
book
Yeah.
because it just like it really breaks down. Because also, like, after reading it, story structure is something that I'm thinking a lot more. And I
Mhm.
think like the more I learn about it, the more I practice it, just like, like it's just the better you get, it's kind of like working out, gotta constantly do it for a consistent amount of time, and then you
Yeah,
get
right.
stronger and then you get bigger.
Yeah.
um I think that like just the way how, like especially learning about like the hero's journey and how like they have to first, they have, their normal life, then the catalyst comes in pretty early, and then they have to decide whether or not they're going to do it.
Right.
Like little beats like that, when I'm watching movies, I'll notice it, and I think it's just really cool because I feel like I'm getting closer to learning how to tell a story properly.
Good. Yeah, that's important. And people don't realize too, right? The best way to write a story is to just start. Like just start writing,
Mhm.
even if
That
it is
too.
garbage. Just start writing and finish your story. Tarantino again, he says finish your script, and as simple as that that quote is, it means so much to me because how many times have you in a situation where you'll write something and you don't even finish the whole story? You have to give it, even if it is bad, even if it's a bad ending or you gave up on it, finish the story. And because you never know if you might go back to it. It also gives you that confidence to pursue your next story. Um, I'm in that habit of completing things that I start. I know everyone's different, but for sure, if I could give anyone a piece of advice with writing is set yourself some goals, 3 pages a day kind of thing,
Mhm.
and then finish it. Finish it as best as you can. It might take a year, but as long as you finish it, you'll be proud of yourself. But I want to get into now, because another thing why I enjoyed looking at your profile is it reminded me a lot of myself. I'm in film more so in the last 2 years than I ever was. And beforehand, I studied marketing at Ryerson, which you're studying at Ryerson right now.
Well,
Um,
I'm studying at Ryerson for film, but I am
for film,
ironically
yes,
enough doing a lot of marketing.
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, yeah. So I'm saying like,
Yeah.
yeah, you're in Ryerson. You're in the place I used to study at. Um, and I want to ask you, like, how did you like pursue these two different paths, and how were you able to merge them together?
Well, marketing kind of just like I didn't make a conscious decision to do it. I remember like growing up as a kid, I often heard like here and there, like, Lauren, you might want to try marketing. I feel like you'd be good at that. And I thought that was funny because then in like the beginning before my second year of university, there was a position open at my in my course union for like the VP of marketing. And I looked at the requirements and I thought that sounds like a cool job. Because also like one thing I'm thinking about just a lot, and I mean, I know I might be getting a little too ahead of myself, but
Right.
Canadian filmmakers, there's definitely like quite a few ones that are popular, but like not enough. There's not
Yeah.
enough Canadian directors because if you're to ask someone off the street, like name 5 Canadian directors, they would probably maybe be only able to name one. And like, maybe not even like because no one really thinks of them as Canadian directors because they don't really direct stuff in Canada or like they do, but
And the
like you
ones,
don't really
yeah,
think about it, right? Like
and
they
the
live
ones,
in LA.
yeah, and the ones exactly your point. I just wanted to interject here. The ones that do that people don't even realize are Canadian. Like James Cameron is technically
Yeah,
Canadian. He was born in
yeah,
Ontario, and they don't really kind of showcase their abilities like in Canada. They don't it's not like Drake. You see how Drake, he's
yeah.
like, oh, I'm a rapper, I live in LA now, or I now live in Toronto, but whatever. He wants people to know, he wants the world to know, like, this is where I come from, this is who I am. So yeah, back to your point, yeah, 100% agree with you on that. And that's something that even for myself, I don't know if you have that same vision, like being representatives of Canada, on a world stage
Yeah,
as
I
filmmakers,
want to
right?
do that
Right?
badly. Like I want to
Yeah.
try and basically make as much as possible like things that take place, in Canada. And I'd really love to do like film, like, I want to make more films that like they're centered around like young adults in
Yeah.
Toronto, or like maybe like
Yeah.
I've always wanted to do a film that happens in Banff because I think Banff is beautiful. It's really,
I
really
have to visit. I
gorgeous.
heard good things. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been there yet, but I
Oh, you
see
heard
all
good
these
things.
photos. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I've seen good things, and also because, like, I was like, "Damn, it looks so freaking gorgeous," and I have friends that have been there, and they told me about it,
Nice.
so I know I have to get to it
Yes.
someday, but yeah, like, I want to be able to like, I learn marketing, so then I can, like, practice it right now with, like, short films, so then I can eventually, like, if I get my name out there, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I make my I want to build like a platform so that I can constantly promote like, my films and also like my peers' films and like
Yep.
try and just make Canada's film industry like as like stronger. Like I know it's just I'm one person, but I want to try and do as much as I can to help
For
it.
sure. Yeah. No, it's I think uh the issue a lot of filmmakers run into is it's just highly regulated, just how things are
Mhm.
run. I think that's what discourages a lot of Canadian talent. Like another example, Denis Villeneuve. I think I'm pronouncing his name right. He did Arrival, right? Blade Runner
Mhm.
2049, Scario. He's wrapping up Dune, and an amazing talent, right? Like insane. I love his style. I'm very much into that kind of style. that cinematography especially. But if I didn't do my research, I wouldn't really know he was Canadian. Not that he needs to profess that he's Canadian and like really
Mhm.
drive his point, but I like what you said. Like I like the idea of filmmakers that you just know where they're coming from, and I feel like they should
Yeah.
take advantage of those things, like take advantage of those stories. And that's why, back to your point about marketing, like I started myself a production company, 94 Productions, because it's like I've always imagined like developing projects not only for myself but others, um, collaborating and working together, to create projects in Toronto. Because right now, right, we're just making projects in the city that we're from, utilizing the landscape as best as we can. But I always imagine, like, I'm sure you can say the same thing, like being at a level where the world wants to see your film, like you're a follow director,
Yeah.
but you bring it to like TIFF, or you bring it to a smaller festival in Toronto, and like that's where the premiere is instead of going to like Sundance. So you kind of bring the world to your front door, to your doorstep. I think that that'd be game changing, right? Because a lot of films, even the films at TIFF, are technically not world premieres. Some of them I've did research. They were at Sundance, or they were at Milan or something like that, Berlin. But it'd be so cool. Just I'm just visualizing it. It'd just be so cool, like to have that following, to have that credibility, that
Mhm.
rapport in the industry, and then people saying like, where are you premiering this film? And it's like I'm going to premiere it in my hometown.
Mhm. Yeah.
So people can enjoy and like see like where you came from, like that there's talent here, because there is, right, and it's growing. I think it's increasingly high. When I was growing up, I didn't really feel it. Um, but now that I'm in the industry, like people like yourself, just seeing you on LinkedIn, and what I enjoy about you is that you're a filmmaker, but you're not working like an accounting job.
Mhm.
You're like in the creative industry, right? Entertainment, like your job right now, Crypto Chicks.
Yeah, yeah, I'm a
Yeah,
video producer. Well, um like a lot of it is like me editing like some of the clips from like the events together, or like making commercials right now.
nice.
So it's, it's a commercial job, but I'm into that because I think like for like in the beginning, it's good to learn, concepts in motion graphics and stuff like that, because directors need to know motion graphics. They need to know what looks good. They need to know like graphic
Yeah,
design. They need to
yeah.
know basically everything. They need to be,
Transitions, yeah,
yeah, they need to be good at visuals. It's something that I think, especially like I know in the earlier stages, like I think people forget to think about transitions and like smooth, like like from scene to scene, and that's really important. And yeah, like I think that, sorry, just to
yeah,
like quickly go back to the Canadian thing, like
for
when I
sure.
was younger, I didn't feel as connected to Canada, and I was kind of just like, oh, LA looks cool. But I think the more I grew up
Same.
and the more I spend time around Toronto, the
Yeah,
more I'm like, and the more I see about like different places in Canada, I'm like, I really love this country. It's awesome. It is
yeah,
amazing. It deserves to have its own space. Like Canada is, I think, one of the few countries where our, not maybe not like few, but like we are like our own films are not mainstream, and that is insane to me. Like, why are we counterculture in our own
yeah,
country? That doesn't
yeah,
make any
yeah,
sense.
yeah. It's so
So
true. Yeah,
I'm, yeah, it's kind of like an obsession now for me to constantly think about how can I promote Canadian movies to my family and my friends? How can I
yeah,
constantly be like, I don't know, the cheerleader for Canadian film? I want it to succeed. And also in television, I'm really happy with like, I haven't seen Schitt's Creek yet, but I'm happy that it's being recognized in
same
America.
here.
That's really cool. Or like Kim's Convenience, it's really cool that it was recognized in America, and I think many other places as well. From what I know, I think a lot of people enjoy that show,
Yeah,
and I think that's really cool.
even yeah, no, exactly that. Even a show like Letterkenny. I don't know if it's as popular in the States, but I know it
Yeah.
was really well done. And I hate to shit on crap on the industry, but in Canada there are some films that I watch on Crave or whatever that it's like, why? How did they even end up here? But then you'll see content like Schitt's Creek and um, like you said, Kim's Convenience, and getting the recognition it deserves. Uh, Schitt's Creek, that when I hear stories like that, it's reassuring to me that, anything is possible.
Mhm.
And it doesn't matter where you're from. Like you have that same concept, right? Of going to Los Angeles, making it, blah, 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 right? That dream. But then you realize, you can create content here and things will get
Yeah.
recognized, especially how the technology is. Schitt's Creek started off with CBC,
Yeah.
and then got picked up by Netflix, and then it was a contender at the Emmys and Golden Globes, and it won. So it's just like amazing to me that the journey's long. That's what a lot of
Yeah.
people don't realize, right?
Mhm.
Like a lot of filmmakers that I look up to, as much as I want to be like by next year, like yeah, walking the red carpet, doing all those things I told you about, like TIFF. The reality is that it's going to be a journey because
Mhm.
a lot of these filmmakers, like Denis Villeneuve, he's um he's like in his 40s. He's
Yeah.
been doing it for a long time. I'm 26, and you're probably younger than me too. So it's going to take a while, right? But I think if we just keep going at it. Also, I should mention you never know where life will take you.
Yeah.
Because what I'm saying is like I say in your 40s, but look at Tarantino, right? I know he's an anomaly, but I believe there could be directors like that. You could be hustling like throughout your 20s, and then by 30 years old, you'll make your breakthrough. You're 31, and you'll be making different kind of content.
Or like, I don't know if you know Firecrackers and Jasmine Mozafari, but
Mhm.
she's doing pretty well, and I believe she's under 30 if I'm not mistaken, and
Wow.
that's
See?
extremely impressive because
Yeah.
she got a Netflix deal and she has a film that it was on Crave for a while, but also it played at TIFF, and a lot of people like a lot of my peers, we look up to her. Like she's really cool because she also came from Ryerson Film. I think that like just like especially like just putting in like the work for like directing, because directing is like especially like working with actors and getting the right performance and knowing
Yeah.
what actor is going to do it right, stuff like that. It takes a lot of practice. Directing is a weird muscle, but you gotta work on it. And I think that it's like definitely don't shoot yourself in the foot, like, or don't stop yourself from achieving what you can achieve, but also like don't like think that you have to do it right away, like you're still young, like I think
Yeah.
that I see what you mean by that. Hmm.
No, for sure. And that's something I think as artists, I don't know if you go through that, like comparisons and, just like looking at your point in your career, like where you're at. Um, I think it's a human tendency, but you have to put into perspective again. This is this is a journey. Like
Hmm.
it's all about opportunity and timing as well. Like you said, getting the right performance, getting the right story, executing it the way you see it, and getting it into the right hands. So yeah, it's as long as you love the process, right, and love the art of storytelling, I think
Yeah.
you can't do any wrong. Um, and we have like a lot of stories in our minds that are we probably want to execute. It reminds me when I took a master class with Scorsese, and he starts the class off, and he just says straight out, he's like, if you want to be a director as a career, this class isn't for you. But if you have an undying passion and a burning feeling to tell a story that's close to your heart, then this class might speak to you.
Mhm.
And I was like, you know what? Like that's so bold and honest. That's so
Yeah.
raw. Like a lot of people don't see it like that. Like he just flat out said, don't take my class if you want to look at it as another job, or you want to get rich, or you want to be famous. Look at it as because you want to tell your story,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So on that note, I want to say thank you again, Lauren, I should say, for coming on the podcast, having this very insightful, thought-provoking conversation about film. This is one of my best ones yet. I always love, diving into films and seeing different opinions. It was very interesting to hear your take on some films that people have enjoyed, but also people that have seen it quite differently, a different angle.
No, no, thank you. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this.
Yes, that's amazing. Great. So, having said that, thank you again, Lauren. Thank you again, everybody, for listening, and we'll talk soon.